First on the list is Senator Formica. Welcome, Senator.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Senator. Welcome.
Senator Austin, Senator Wong, Representative Zdradinsky, members of the Public Safety Committee, good morning. I'm here to testify in support of SB 11, which is an act concerning the authorization of a casino gambling facility in East Windsor, and to testify in support of SB 17, an act authorizing sports wagering, internet gambling, and internet keno. Senate Bill 11 seeks to finalize a process to facilitate the opening of the joint venture East Windsor Casino project previously approved by a bipartisan majority in the state legislature. That bill had a requirement for the Secretary of the Interior to weigh in regarding their approval, a requirement that SB 11 seeks to remove as unnecessary. This is a Connecticut issue, Connecticut revenues, Connecticut jobs, and politics in Washington shouldn't play any part in this particular decision. I urge the committee to approve this bill to get Connecticut back to work. The joint venture has spent millions of dollars in preparation of this site on this project and should be allowed to complete the construction and open the casino. Senate Bill 17 seeks to provide the two currently operating casinos with more tools by which to compete with our border states with the allowance of sports and internet gambling as well as internet keno. These are activities that are going on around us and should be a natural addition to our highly successful resort gaming operations and will comply with the existing compact. Connecticut needs the jobs, we need the revenue, we need to support our partners, and this activity in both of these bills would provide that, and I urge the committee to act favorably on both SB 17 and SB 11, and I thank you for the opportunity this morning to address you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions? Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Senator Formica. Last year, we sat side by side talking about the MMCT casino, the joint venture between two tribal nations. Do you have any idea how long the two tribal nations have been here in Connecticut?
I happen to do business in that part of the state, and the first casino, the Mashantuckets, arrived somewhere in 1991, 92, at a time when Electric Boat was downsizing their facility, and they provided needed jobs to balance off and diversify the economics of southeastern Connecticut. The Mohegans opened their casino a few years after that.
And that's about the casino, but even the tribal nations themselves, how long have they been here in Connecticut, the tribal nations, as tribal nations, pre-casino gambling?
I misunderstood your question. My apologies, Senator. Centuries.
So they have been partners with the state of Connecticut since Connecticut's inception. Would it be fair to say that?
It would, yes.
And so we have two tribal nations who are used to not being necessarily given the same respect as other areas. So would it be fair to say that they have worked around that, and not only does Eastern Connecticut respect its tribal nations, it considers them good friends and good partners?
I would agree, and Eastern Connecticut certainly embraces the opportunity and partnership that we have with both of the tribes there.
So I remember in conversation with you that you're very profitable business in East Lyme, one of the best restaurants in the area, I might say, is actually received more business as a result of the two gaming institutions. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I think, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, and all of southeastern Connecticut has seen an influx in business as a result of the opportunities that were created first, I think, going way back to the bingo hall, and then as the resorts developed. But I think more importantly was the diversification of the economy in southeastern Connecticut. As Electric Boat downsized to about 6,000, these groups came up, and we were able to stabilize southeastern Connecticut. So the entire southeastern and eastern port of Connecticut have done very well as a result of the trickle-down effect from the economic opportunities provided by these two of the largest resorts in the world.
And you are chair of the Tourism Caucus, is that true?
Yes.
And as chair of the Tourism Caucus, how have the gaming institutions impacted tourism in the whole state of Connecticut, but Eastern Connecticut in particular?
Well, certainly as the operations grew in the early 90s and began to prosper, it really alongside Mystic became the tourism destination in Connecticut. And as a result of that, other opportunities grew, and tourism industry has spread and flourished throughout Connecticut as people became more aware of our great state. And obviously driving up the two main interstates, 91, 95, people get an awareness of how wonderful this state is. And the Tourism Caucus that we co-founded a few years ago, of which you're a member, has worked in a bipartisan manner to support all corners of the state of Connecticut. But we have to identify those main attractions, and certainly it's Mystic and these resort casinos that are amongst the biggest.
So, in addition to the work that has been done on the Tourism Caucus, which is really a great impact on the state of Connecticut, I believe it's $3 for every $1 of investment that we can count on in tourism in Eastern Connecticut. Is that a fair statement?
State dollars invested return $3 in tax revenue to the state for every dollar the state invests. It's a much higher multiple for businesses and attractions.
And the bill that we have before us today, both bills are both supported on a bipartisan, bicameral basis. Is that true?
Yes, they were when they were passed in the legislature last session.
And even this session, we've expanded our support of this in a bipartisan, bicameral basis.
Yes, the entire southeastern delegation has been a leader in a bipartisan way, and that is spread throughout the legislature.
And working together with each other, and I'll posit that you and I have disagreed once or twice on a couple of policies, but this is something we've never disagreed on.
We've disagreed, Senator Ross?
I don't know, every once in a while. We might have been on the opposite side. But
yes, no, we have had our moments, but on this one we stand united.
And working with both the Eastern Chamber and the Norwich Chamber, have you seen the joint work that is being done with our tribal partners in Eastern Connecticut to afford a robust economic development in Eastern Connecticut? It was sure not true always in Eastern Connecticut, but we work together to try to keep the jobs that we have.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Both of the major chambers are involved, and in support of not only the activities on the resort casinos, but the diversification that those businesses have been able to kind of spider web out into Connecticut and other areas.
And are you aware of the Mashantucket Pequot grant that the state divvies out?
Yes.
Are you aware of the fact that it takes, for every one payment to Bridgeport, one payment to Hartford, one payment to Waterbury, one payment to New Haven, that each of those one payments takes 40 Eastern Connecticut towns to equal what those tribal nations are giving to the cities in the state individually?
Yes, I understand that there's a multiple.
Occasionally, do you hear from your constituents and the other elected mayors and first selectmen that that's an unfair way to divvy up the Mashantucket Pequot grant?
Well, certainly there's concern about the host area being fairly compensated for the services that they provide.
And so my understanding is that Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, and Waterbury has each received over more than $250 million since the tribal nations invested into Eastern Connecticut. Is that the number that you have?
I would trust you on that number, but I know it's in that range.
And what kind of community investments have the tribal nations made? What do they do as community partners that you're aware of?
Well, both of the tribes have been partners deeply in the community with philanthropic efforts that they provide in ways too numerous to mention throughout the community. They're just have become part of the fabric of the communities in southeastern Connecticut.
I think that the chairman of the Mashantuckets was selected as Citizen of the Year this year. Is that true?
I believe it is. Yeah, I
it's
think you're talking about the Eastern Chamber
Yes.
Citizen of the Year?
Yes. And not only what the tribes do you know in raw numbers the jobs that have been provided in Eastern Connecticut that 140 towns send workers to? I believe the number is around 12 or 13,000.
I think that's what it is now. It was a much higher multiple than that in the beginning, and as I said, it was critical in the diversification of our economy. And we talk about Connecticut's economic diversification, which we all have to focus on, and we're focusing on manufacturing. In those early days, that was not the case, and without these two operations, we would have been in very much trouble. It was down to about 6,000 people in Electric Boat, zero in these resort casinos, and then they came up to 15 or so thousand, and then now we see Electric Boat coming up to the 18,000 person mark, and that's what diversification in an economy is all about. Sectors that grow on their own individually but work in synergy with others, and I think that's been a big part of the success of southeastern Connecticut.
I can't agree more. I think that with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board and the work that they have done with our tribal nations and with the manufacturing pipeline and the Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance, I often hear them speak about the people that are, many of them here today, that work down at the two casinos that have worked there for decades and have raised their families and sent their children to college and bought homes in what I would posit is the most beautiful part of the state of Connecticut. Have you known of any workers in your district that have worked at the two casinos since they've been opened?
I knew some folks that actually started at the bingo hall and were still there. So it was even before they were open. So it's been a long-standing, supporter of jobs in our area. And I would just like to point out, you talk about the Eastern Workforce Investment Board, which has developed a formula for entry-level manufacturing. In this budget that we're operating under now, the WIBs throughout the state are going to benefit from that workforce investment opportunity, and I think having the opportunity to replicate that program throughout the state of Connecticut will only lift economically other areas of our state as well.
And since the two tribal nations came into existence with the two once they were federally recognized and were allowed to develop two gaming institutions, the best entertainment centers on the eastern seaboard, far outperforming Atlantic City. How many years have we been bringing up the tribal nations to talk about allowing commercial gambling in the state of Connecticut? I think we're on our 4th year.
I believe almost as long as I've been here, yes.
Do you know if we've invited Newport News to come up here to be a direct competitor to Electric Boat?
I don't believe we would want to do that, or have we?
Do you know if we have brought a direct competitor to Pratt and Whitney to come up here so that they would have a direct competitor up here with them?
Not to my knowledge.
Are you aware of the fact that the state gave more than $300 million in tax credits to both Pratt and Whitney and Sikorsky?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
I think you and I voted on that. And then have you ever had the tribal nations come and ask for tax credits?
They
From
have
the
not
state
to,
of-
they have not to me.
How much money have they given over their 27 years to the state of Connecticut to support its revenue?
Well, it would be in the billions, as it's roughly $250 million annually at this point.
So it's about $8 billion is what they have given to the state of Connecticut in revenue. I'm a little confused that we're not inviting Newport News up here. Have you ever heard of us requiring President Geiger to come and sit in front of the legislature when we last year approved $83 million for them? Did President Geiger himself get ordered up to the legislature to talk?
President Geiger, you mean the president of the Electric Boat
Correct.
Division of General Dynamics? No, to my knowledge, he was not asked or invited.
Was Phoebe Navakovic, the head of General Dynamics, required to come up here to talk about jobs in eastern Connecticut?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, I don't think we directed them to come up. So we have, let me just, if I could recap with you some of the things that you've brought to our attention here. We have two of the strongest companies in the state, number 7 and number 8 in employment. They've given us $8 billion to the state, and they're good community partners. They've lived here forever. They actually lived here longer than you and I and our families. And we direct them to come up here. We tell them that we're looking for someone to work against them, and we want them to join them in partnership. And that's how Connecticut is treating 2 of its top 10 employees and its number 1 taxpayer. I'm sort of confused. I thought we were trying to be business friendly. Thank you very much, Senator. I enjoy working with you. I look forward to working with you in the future, and I look forward to today's hearing.